Welcome to the Pongcast, brought to you by the Pong-A-Thon. We are a movement that exists solely to see the issue of modern-day slavery end. Right now around the world, there are estimated to be more than 40 million slaves, and we believe this is not okay. We fight modern-day slavery by creating awareness of the issue, but primarily through the fundraising of monies that goes to support 7 incredible organisations that tackle the issue of modern-day slavery in different ways. We raise funds through the marathon table tennis events, or what we like to call Pong-A-Thons, where communities all across Australia and the US will engage and play table tennis together, some for 2 hours, some for 24 hours, to raise money to fight modern day slavery. Since 2011, we've raised nearly $2.7 million, and we're very proud of the contribution that we have made in this global fight. In our episodes together, we will explore what's happening in the movement, as well as have incredible interviews and conversations with our partner organisations where they discuss the impact that is happening on the ground. We hope you enjoy it. Well, Matt, welcome to the Pongcast, episode 1. This is our very first Pongcast episode. We're very excited about it. Matt, how are you going?
Good.
Very good. Now, most of you would know who Matt is. Matt is our illustrious general manager at the Pong. We're trying out something new this year, doing some podcasts. We'll do them every month, so look out for them. Basically, the idea is for you to get all news Pong in one place. So we'll talk about the community, talk about the impact from our partners, talk about what's coming up, and interview some of our awesome partners as well, which we've got later on in the episode, which will be really great. Matt, how have you been doing? You been traveling well?
Yeah, traveling very well, thank you very much. And it's been nice to actually be able to start traveling again. Not overseas, of course, but had a few interstate trips of late, and it's been good to jump on aeroplanes again.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'll tell you a little bit later about some more aeroplanes that you and I are going to be jumping on.
Very
But
good.
how good is this Pongcast? Why have a podcast when you can have a
podcast? That's right. No, the wordplay was too good to be true. We couldn't just call it a podcast. We had to call it a Pongcast. Matt, fill us in. Obviously, we've been working quite hard behind the scenes over the last couple of months, doing a number of different things, building our team and doing visiting places and preparing for campaign. Fill us in on what's new, what's happening at the moment.
Oh, okay. Well, to keep this short, I'll just give you a few things because there's just too many to tell everybody about. First and foremost, our beloved colleague and founder of the Pong, Adrian, is having a very well-deserved and very necessary break at the present time. It's a break that will be for most of 2021, we believe. I can say he's doing really well. And we're probably going to see him back in Pong action probably somewhere towards the end of this year. And hopefully at that same time, he'll be able to have returned home, borders permitting, to Thailand. So he's doing well, but he's needed this break for a while. So it's good to see him getting it. Moving on from that, David, and talking about aeroplanes, we flew to Adelaide in March, you and I, and we had a spectacular 4 days and nights meeting with many Pong communities, many churches over there, lots of people who have already been walking with the Pong for a long time, but also many people who were introduced to us and wanted to know more about the work of the Pong and why what we do matters. It was an incredibly encouraging trip. We've also got, you and I, we're heading over to Perth in mid-June, and we're going to catch up with a lot of the Perth Pongers and the Perth communities over there. And for one reason or another, we haven't been over there for about 3 years now. So we are so looking forward to getting over there. And then for July, we're already busy planning our New South Wales road trip, which is going to be a lot of driving. And we're going to be catching up again with communities we haven't seen for 2 or 3 years. So if you are watching the Pongcast and you're in either Perth or New South Wales and you think, love to catch up with Matt and David and hear more about what's going on with Pong, hey, reach out to us. We'd love to sit down with you and have a chat. And
absolutely. Yeah.
A couple of other exciting things, David.
Yeah.
A couple of new team members, well, 4 new team members who have joined us.
Yeah, amazing.
Two chaps who have been long-standing Pong supporters in Adelaide. We've brought them on specifically for a few hours' work each week to do some Pong planting to establish new Pong venues. That's great. We've also got a gentleman in Victoria who's doing exactly the same thing. And most exciting of all, I think, is we have a fella in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States of America, who is starting to do some Pong planting for us over there. So it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
absolutely.
David, we're good, but there are only 2 of us.
That's true. And maybe that's a good point to just say we've already raised about $15,000, I believe, already. And that is due to our event in Pennsylvania, from my understanding.
Predominantly so, yeah. And what a great start to the year. That was such an encouragement.
Yeah.
A couple of dates, David, for people's diaries.
Yes, tell us.
27th of May, and I can't quite work out off the top of my head what day that is.
It's a Thursday, I believe.
Okay, Thursday, the 27th of May, we launch our 2021 Pong campaign. So look out on your socials for that. We've done all the filming for it. It's going to look great. And the theme for this year is One Life. And I think it's important enough to say again, David, it's one life.
Yeah.
And gosh, there's a lot of thinking and grooving around one life that people can do and that we'll encourage people to do. David, one of the lovely things that's happened in the last few weeks, especially, has been the number of Pong communities who, for COVID reasons, were not able to Pong in 2020, who have reached out to us and have already started registering on the website. So to be able to welcome so many of these communities back to Pong once again in 2021, absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
And if your community is thinking of Ponging again this year, most of you will know what to do already. Jump on our website and register, and just rock and roll from there. But an important date also is Friday the 10th and Saturday the 11th of September, and that is when we are doing Pong United again. I know a lot of people will remember Pong United from last year, but in a nutshell, it's a 24-hour live stream where we look to bring as many Pong venues and communities together simultaneously throughout that 24-hour period, and it's madcap. It's a lot of hard work, but boy, it's a lot of fun. So I think the message from that, David, is firstly, Pong at the time that suits you and your community best. But secondly, if it's possible that time might be September the 10th and 11th, do consider joining us for the Pong United live stream, because it will be fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think, David, in a nutshell, that's about some of the key things happening at the moment.
Yeah, heaps of stuff. No, thank you, Matt, for sharing. I think, September 10, 11 is going to be a lot of fun. Last year we raised 120 grand, I think, Matt, in the 24 hours, which is just bonkers. And we're hoping to raise $500,000 this year, Matt. So we raised about 350,000 with COVID and everything that happened. That was an extraordinary result, and the impact that's being seeded in the ground, which we'll talk about in a sec, is phenomenal. Now, that's awesome, Matt. Thanks for sharing about all the things that's happening in the world of Pong at the moment. Really excited about this year's campaign. Some of the impact that we'd love to be able to share with you. Our partners have been working really hard despite COVID, and there's been some extraordinary reports coming through, Matt. And one that I'd love to share with you from one of our partners. And this is only one of our 7 partners, so this is just a snippet, really, of the impact that the Pong has been able to seed. Just last month in the north of Thailand, 3 underage girls who were held against their will were rescued from massage parlors. So this was an operation that was conducted with law enforcement. Our partner was part of the process of getting the appropriate intelligence to ensure that the arrest actually took place and the rescue was able to legally happen. And so they helped with the intelligence, and then when the rescue actually occurred, they made sure that there was the appropriate staff, female staff, to be able to support these girls. And so these girls are now going to go through a whole process of counselling and trauma care, aftercare, make sure that they have the opportunity to go back into school, that they have the appropriate supports in place. Their family environments may be deemed unsafe. So there'll be a whole process that they will go through, our partner, to ensure that these girls are safe and they're able to get back into school and live a life full of hope and a bright future. But yeah, that's just one example. So there were 2 convictions, and this just happened last month. There'll be a full-on court process, and our partner will be a key part of that process as well, making sure that all the evidence is there so that these traffickers are able to be arrested and enforced against. So, Matt, that's just one example. Like these 3 girls in north of Thailand, we will never meet. Most likely we will never meet. But everyone that participated, everyone that fundraised, everyone that engaged in our Pong campaign last year, this project is being funded specifically from the dollars from last year. So for those that may be new to the Pong, all the dollars that were raised last year go to effectively fund the programs for this year. So it's future funding, which is really, really awesome. So if you want to hear more about or understand more about our partners, please visit our website, pingpongathon.com. We've got statistics, we've got information about all of our 7 partners. When you partner with the Pong, you're partnering and fighting human trafficking and modern-day slavery in a very holistic way. We have 7 partners that tackle the issue in different ways. So please visit our website for more information on that. And lastly, really, really exciting, and this was filmed a little while ago, so my hair is a little longer, Matt. We have a interview with one of our partners, the Freedom Story. And the Freedom Story do a little bit different work. They work in prevention in the north of Thailand, right near the Burmese or the Myanmar and Laos borders. And so we're talking with Lucy, and Lucy gives us a little bit of an understanding of what the Freedom Story does, and she gives us some insight into how they've tackled COVID. Thailand right now is going through a 3rd wave, so as most of the world is moving on, Thailand and other countries like India, they're really struggling with a 3rd wave. It's nowhere near as bad as it is in India for Thailand, but there is lockdowns occurring, and so Lucy is able to articulate how they've been able to support their beneficiaries, the people that the women, children and girls and the boys that they look to protect. And yeah, we hope that you enjoy this episode, also this interview with Lucy from the Freedom Story. All right, it is my absolute pleasure to have a quick chat with Lucy, who's from the Freedom Story, and this is going to be the first interview that we have with our partners as a part of our podcast series. So Lucy, you're kicking it off for us. It's a great pleasure and honor to have you on the show, so to speak. So for those that maybe are new to the Pong, maybe give a bit of context of who the Freedom Story actually are and the work that you guys do.
Sure, yeah. So Freedom Stories works up in northern Thailand, and we work on the prevention of child trafficking. So really intervening before the abuse and the exploitation starts to kind of equip kids with the skills that they need, the information, the knowledge, the education that they need to kind of overcome trafficking. The way that we see, or not be trafficked, I guess, the way we see trafficking really happening in this part of the world is let's say, you're growing up in a household and there's you and then your parents, but they split up when you were younger. You're also living with your grandparents, maybe 4 or 5 of you living in a household. You might have a younger sibling, and you have maybe 1 or 2 people who are earners in the household. Everybody else is either in school or perhaps is too old or has some sort of a disability. And your overall income per day, sort of the highest amount that a Thai person would earn in, let's say, a construction or an agricultural job, which is most of what people do in the area where we work, would be, I think, about 15 Australian dollars per day.
Okay.
And you're using that to kind of cover the costs of everyone in your household. So very little money for a lot of the costs. In the even more rural areas where we work, people are earning, let's say, like, trying to do the math here. They're earning 5,000 Thai baht a month, which is around, let's say, 200 US dollars, like 400 Australian dollars, for their entire household.
Right.
And while expenses might be low because you can kind of live off the vegetable patch outside your house, you still have to pay for your child's education. And education itself is free, but you're paying for uniforms, for books, transportation, snacks. If there's foreign teachers or air-conditioned classrooms, you have to pay for that as well, extra costs. And it can be like 30% of someone's income, just the education
Wow.
piece. So when these kids, or when, let's say you in this instance, get to be 13, 14, your family's starting to think, well, it'd be really helpful actually if we pulled David out of school and asked him to start to work, because one, they no longer have the expense of sending you to school, and then they have additional income from you going off to work. But because you are not of the legal age to be able to work, perhaps you haven't completed the minimum government requirement of school, you don't have the qualifications needed to get a job that wouldn't, like, basically wouldn't exploit you. And very normal here for children to be paid less than the minimum wage because they can't work as hard, is kind of the logic. So Freedom Story intervenes to kind of do three main things. We provide scholarships and education programs, so after school programs. We do a huge amount of mentoring, because what we find is that a lot of these kids are coming from traumatic backgrounds, broken families, they're very isolated. A lot of them say they don't have anybody else they can turn to in a time of need, or maybe only one or two other people.
Right.
And so we do a lot of going to their homes, taking them out, visiting their families, visiting them at school to ensure they have an adult relationship they can rely on. And that has been really pivotal in kind of developing resilience amongst these students. We also then have a human rights program. So we go into communities and teach people their rights, ensure that they know what trafficking is, know what their rights are, know what online exploitation is, know what child abuse is, how to report it, how to identify it, all those kinds of things. And then the final piece is a sustainable livelihoods program, where we partner with households to kind of create income generation activities that they could do, raising chickens and selling the eggs, or pigs, or planting vegetables to be sold at the market, just to kind of raise their income so that they can kind of move out of poverty and support their kids to stay in school. So that's kind of the crux of what Freedom Story does. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So obviously the scholarship program specifically, that by virtue of doing that, that enables kids to stay in school, which then, as they're at less risk of being trafficked, would be my guess. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, the longer they stay in school, you know, the better job prospects that they have, the more skills that they develop, all of those really important things.
Yeah, wow. And the mentoring that you guys do, is that done, how do you guys do that? Is that part of this, like after school? What would that look like in an ordinary week?
Yeah. So I will say that it's all done by our local staff. So that
awesome.
includes things like after school programs. So just spending one-on-one time working on homework with students, or playing games, or teaching students, you know, English, math, just kind of spending that one-on-one time with students. And then, you know, for people who need extra support or are going through a particularly difficult time at that stage, doing things like home visits. So going to someone's home, usually they'll bring dinner and kind of eat with them, eat with the student, talk to the family, ask how things are going, what are the challenges you're facing, how can Freedom Story support you better, kind of help to solve problems, answer questions. You know, I think a big thing we see is a lot of these kids are the first in their family to go through high school, or even to kind of progress beyond primary school. So when they're thinking about what should I study, and if I want to be a doctor, what do I have to do? If I want to be a teacher, how do I get there? Like doing a lot of providing that kind of education guidance and saying, okay, you know, maybe you're best suited for a vocational degree, and then you could go on to be an auto mechanic, or doing that kind of support. And just, you know, we meet the boyfriends, we meet the girlfriends, we take them out for coffee. You know, all these kids, a lot of them are really growing up in situations where they don't go out to eat. They don't go to coffee shops. So taking them out for ice cream to celebrate the end of term, or visiting them when they have their graduations at school, it's really important, and it shows that we're there to support them and we're really proud of them. And you know, we really invest a lot of time and energy in this area. Constantly, the staff are always getting phone calls and messages to kind of talk to students. Even students who have already graduated from the program still come back and ask for kind of advice and support. So yeah, it's a big part.
That's so good. And I can see how it works directly alongside the scholarship program, because it creates that additional layer of support. You're able to build relationships, you're able to check in, see what other issues are going on in school, in the household, etc. That's awesome. Is there maybe a story or something you could share recently that speaks to the impact of what you guys are doing, and I guess what you've just talked about there?
Yeah, I think one of the stories that stands out to me recently is one of our scholarship students. We're going to call her Pikun. She's 19, but she has been involved with Freedom Story ever since she was, Freedom Story's been operating 13 years. So ever since she was like 6 or 7, she would come to join the activities. She lives in the village kind of around our resource center in Chiang Rai. When she was younger, her mother passed away in a motorbike accident, and so she had been living with her mom and her younger brother, and they went then to live with their dad, who has struggled with substance addiction, her whole life basically, and isn't really able therefore to kind of like work consistently, and so because of that, they didn't have a lot of income. The income they did have, he was often kind of spending on his addiction. And they were just, really struggling to survive. There was many times where their electricity was cut off, for example, because he couldn't pay the bills.
Right.
And so growing up, she was involved with Freedom Story activities. She came to the after school center and the after school program. And the staff would, step in and speak to her teachers and go to her house, and multiple times where we helped, pay that light bill because they have to have electricity to be able to do the things they need to do to go to school. But she joined our scholarship program, and she has had, understandably, with the incredibly difficult background she's had mental health struggles, and she has a younger brother, so she feels a lot of responsibility for him. But we've just been supporting her for the last 9 years in the scholarship program. But this past year, in particular, her dad had a really bad motorbike accident, and he was actually in the hospital for 2 to 3 weeks. And so, and this was just after the COVID lockdown. And it was amazing for me. I got to see it really up close with our staff, to go and they visited him at the hospital. They visited the students at home. They helped with the process of getting him from the hospital in the city to the hospital closer to their home, helped get him settled back at home. There was a lot of support that she needed, just practical support in caring for her dad in that time. And she was also at the time going through the process of finishing what would in America be the equivalent of like a GED program, so like an informal high school kind of process where you kind of study and work at the same time. So she's finishing her high school diploma and trying to figure out what's next, and dealing with this thing with her dad. And her younger brother also is graduated and is going into high school, and so trying to find the right space for him. And but the staff really just stepped up and stepped in to support both her and her younger brother, also part of the program. They got the younger brother into like a robotics and computer focused high school degree, and he went from being kind of like an average student to being top 3 in his class.
Wow, because I'm guessing that was where his skill set was, and
exactly.
What his interest.
And he loves it, and he's so happy and confident now. And we've got him living in a dorm close to the new school. She moved to live in the city, and their dad is now doing much better and is back at work, and is like really recovered really well. But it was amazing in a time of really significant crisis that I think could have really disrupted both her education, his education, and put them both at risk, to see the staff step in and really provide that extra support and that extra kind of above and beyond care that these kids needed at that time.
So good. Thanks for sharing. And I think looking at it from the perspective of what would the trajectory of her life been if the Freedom Story teen hadn't been around. Obviously, in the immediate, what the story you just shared, but obviously 9 years, however long she's been part of the program. Yeah, it's unfathomable to think where she may be, what kind of vulnerable position she may be in. And so you times that story by hundreds, thousands, millions, like it shows the importance of the incredible work you guys do. So
Thank you.
That's really exciting to hear, Lucy. You kind of touched on it just to finish up our time. COVID-19, that happened right as lockdowns were being put in place. How have you found, and maybe you can speak to the micro and the macro in terms of human trafficking, how have you found COVID-19 affect the work that you guys do in the space?
Yeah, so I would say, 2 kind of different tracks at the same time. When COVID hit, we could see that it was going to put people who were at risk even more at risk. all of those risk factors that we talk about, poverty, low levels of education, being like isolated or marginalized, are all increased with COVID, right? So people are losing their income, they're losing their jobs. Kids are more likely to be pulled out of school or to be out of school in general. In Thailand, kids got back into school quite quickly, but there was about a 3 to 4 month gap between when they left school last year and when they went back.
That's a long time.
It's a long time, and it's supposed to only be 2, and then kids are much more isolated, I think, because the parents are more stressed. The kids feel that stress. When they were, Thailand sort of toyed with the idea of doing online learning. That's incredibly difficult for this country where not everybody has access to a computer or a smartphone or the internet. It's just really difficult. So we're definitely seeing an increase in all of those risk factors, and just a huge impact of COVID in the community, not necessarily in terms of caseload, but certainly in terms of economic impact and just the way that people are feeling, the kind of mental health and the stress of the whole situation. And then the kind of practical implications for Freedom Story were, obviously Thailand had about a 3-month pretty intense lockdown and we couldn't see our students face to face. And so much of our work really depends on face-to-face interactions. There's so much you can miss through a video call, but we did, especially during lockdown, really press into calling every student every week to make sure that they kind of had the most updated information and that they were okay. We also did a lot of practical support. So we provided masks, hand gel, alcohol spray, and even in this kind of second wave, dry goods, so rice, eggs, all of that kind of stuff that people are going to need to kind of survive. And actually last year so the overall number of kind of home visits and mentorship that we provided was 150% of what we had provided in 2019.
Wow. That's amazing.
So yeah, we really pushed into making sure the kids knew we were here for them, even in the middle of all of this chaos. They could always come and talk to us. We were available. So yeah, I would say that's kind of been the big impact. We do expect COVID to continue to impact trafficking and to increase trafficking in the next few years, even as perhaps the virus load itself decreases globally. I do think the economic impact is going to last for a while. I think people are going to be more likely to be looking for jobs, and more desperate for that kind of job security, and much more likely to perhaps take a job as a maid in Bangkok, which then turns into a trafficking situation, or to take that job on a fishing boat, which then turns into a trafficking situation. So looking forward, we're continuing to try to figure out the best ways to pivot the programs to kind of address those needs.
Wow. So just rewinding 30 seconds, when you said you had 150% more contact hours and visits, I'm guessing that was with the same number of people, right? You didn't grow your team by 150%?
No, we didn't grow our team. We actually
Wow.
had, I think, like 2 or 3 open positions last year that we didn't hire for because we, just had no idea how it was going to go for fundraising. So.
Wow. So yeah, your team really stretched. I guess that was the point I was making. You guys stepped in the gap because it would have been needed, right? So no, that's awesome.
Yeah, they did.
That's awesome to hear. So thank you so much, Lucy, for being a part of the podcast today. I think it's really important for our community at large. As you know, we have 80 plus communities every year ponging, and the funds that they raise go directly to help the Freedom Story do what you guys do. So I guess their impact is really what you're talking about today. So it's been such a pleasure to hear the stories.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. We are so incredibly moved by the support for Pong. The fact that there's 80 plus communities who are getting together to do these events to support us is just awesome.
Well, being able to hear stories like that from you makes it all worthwhile. So thanks so much for being a part of today and sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Matt, what an extraordinary interview that was with Lucy from the Freedom Story.
Yeah, almost speechless, mate. I think every time I hear Lucy or somebody from the Freedom Story, or indeed anybody from any of our partners talk, it's always very moving. And I just wrote down a few words there, David. I wrote down fragility. Like we know that life's fragile, full stop, yeah? But I guess there's some parts of the world where life is more fragile. And I wrote down fine lines. And the fine lines in Lucy's part of the world and the people that she's dealing with, the fine lines between some pretty horrific things occurring or not, are fine lines. And I also wrote down Pong dollars at work. And you said yourself towards the end of the interview, David, that, you know, Lucy and the Freedom Story stand in the gap and are able to support these young people and families. And yet it's our Pong community choosing to stand in the gap, play and raise funds that allows Lucy and the Freedom Story to do their standing in the gap, if that makes sense. I think it does. Yeah. I'm a bit emotional. But it's Pong dollars at work, your dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And I think it's just be encouraged, everyone listening out there. If you've donated, if you've participated, if you've been an event organizer and run an event, if you've played the full 24 hours like some of you crazy people out there, if you've only, you know, had a short 2-hour session, you know, it all matters, it all counts, it all has created impact, and you guys should be proud of that. So yeah, we really hope you've been encouraged. We're going to have another interview with one of our other partners in a month's time, so I really look forward to that. Yeah, we hope that you've enjoyed this little episode, and we look forward to continuing to bring the news around what is happening all around Australia and the US in terms of the Pong, but also obviously, probably more importantly, the incredible impact that's being enabled through your efforts. So yeah, thank you for watching and listening.
Thank you.
For more information on the Pong-A-Thon or to donate and be a part of the fight against slavery, please visit our website at pingpongathon.com. You can also visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/pingpongathon, or on Instagram at pingpongathon. Our campaign launches on May the 27th, so we would love for you and your community to be a part of our campaign this year. Please visit our website for more details.